Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, and today we are doing a review of One Salt Sea by Seanan McGuire, the fifth book in the October Daye series. As many of you know, this is a series that I have been reading in 2020 to prepare for the release of the 14th book in September. This is a series that I very much enjoy. But it is a reread, and so because it is a reread, I break up my reviews into three different parts. The first part being a non-spoilery review of this book, the second part being all my thoughts and feelings that are kind of spoilery for just this book or previous books, and then the third part is all my thoughts and feelings that kind of get into things that will spoil the remainder of this series. And I do this so that wherever you're at in this series, you can go ahead and peace out whenever you need to. So with that, let's get into it. So October Daye is a half fae, half human changeling knight, and she is attached to a local kingdom, and when anything weird kind of pops up, she is the one that just generally is dealing with it. Now, in this particular book, two children have gone missing from a local duchy. It is actually from a completely different kingdom, one that is under the sea, called the Undersea, because we're very descriptive in our names. And the queen of the kingdom on the land that is right next to it has been accused of taking them. Toby has to hunt them down to avert an entire war. So let's jump right in with the world building. So this is a series that does world building very, very well. And in this book, we actually get to see a lot of the parts of the Undersea, which is a kingdom we have never seen before. We've never seen our underwater, saltwater kind of fae other than the Selkies, who are a little bit half land, half sea. And so we got to see this entirely different world. It felt very natural. It was very interesting. And I also liked it because when we were finding out all about this entirely different kind of kingdom, we also were comparing and contrasting it to how things are done on land. So we learned more about how the land stuff too. And so the world building was just really well integrated into the story, and there was so much of it, and it was just so interesting. And then let's talk about characters. So I've said this before. I said this in the last review for Late Eclipses, and it feels like what ends up happening is we have a book, and at the ending or like somewhere in the book, the characters realize something about themselves, some big event happens that changes their perspective or how they're doing things, and then the growth actually happens off page. And then when we come back in the next book, they are changed. And they're not 100% like where they're going to end up, but they have changed and grown. And that's, I remember that that's more what happens, what we see happen from now until the end of what's out, because a lot of these books are event action packed, and so we just don't have time for the characters to grow on page. But that being said, it is very interesting to take a look at what has changed. Toby herself is so much better. She is so much more settled into her role. She still hasn't quite accepted that she is a hero, but you know, she understands that she is a knight. She understands that she has very powerful allies, and she knows how to leverage that into making people do what they really should be doing anyway. And so it is very nice to kind of watch her fall into that role and be really, really comfortable with that. Additionally, again, we don't see a lot of growth happen on the page, but we got to see a lot of the side characters and meet some new side characters, and we're starting to finally get some of the background on these characters, and it's so interesting. There are two major ones that we kind of, I think two. Yeah, two. I was trying to remember the second one in my head. But there are two major characters that we do get some background on, and it is so lovely to see. Again, it's not so much that they have developed or changed. We just understand them better. And now Toby understands them so much more. Okay, so let's talk about plot and pacing. So pacing is actually very, very good. It is fast. It's not like, hold on for dear life, we're just running to the end, but it is very fast. The thing that I like about the October Daye series, especially from now until the end, is that for the most part, Seanan McGuire as a writer has really kind of gotten into the groove, and she found a really nice balance between the world building and like the action and the dialogue and this, all the different parts of a good story. She has found a really nice balance. And so even though she is giving us just a ton of information about this undersea kingdom and how it works and these character developments and like laying down clues for the future and all this kind of stuff, it still moved so quickly. And so that she's just becoming a much better author is really what it is. But it is so fast paced and it is so easy to read. The plot itself was really nice. I mean, it's well done, it's well executed, and it felt like an independent plot where we just happened to learn about the undersea. It just happened to set up these situations where we now do get backstory on some of these characters. It just happened to lay down the groundwork for some of the stuff that's coming in future books. You know, it didn't feel like the plot was in service of those things. It feels like those are just side elements to the plot, if that makes sense. And so I thought that was really, really well done. So yeah, I really, really like this book. The only downside that I have is that I am getting just a little bit tired of the missing children. I know that this is a thing that pops up throughout the series. If that is something that you need to be careful of, just know that that's not something that goes away in the series, and it is very, very prominent at the beginning. It kind of, we get at least a little bit of relief in the middle, but it's still there later. So just a heads up, like this is a recurring theme. But I really like this book. I've now gotten to the point where, again, Seanan McGuire found her stride. Our main character has found their stride. And so from now until the end, I'm just probably going to be gushing about how good these books are. But I gave this a 4.5 stars out of 5. So that is my non-spoiler review for this book. If you do not want to hear any of my spoilery thoughts, then you... pardon me, then you should probably click away now. Bye. Okay, so I'm just going to go in order. For the most part, I'm going to go in order of like chronological when I saw them in the book, because that is how I have them written down. But first of all, I really like that we finally are starting to get hints as to just how important Raj is to Toby and how important Toby is to Raj. So, like, in the beginning, we do see Raj is at her house just chilling with her cats, and, like, Toby makes a comment that he's there frequently. But also we see much more, like, concrete example when Raj is trying to coach Tybalt into making coffee for Toby, because they have to ask something for her. They want to butter her up. They know the best way to do that is to hand her a cup of coffee. And so he's trying to help Tybalt do that. And of course he couldn't do that without like having some innate knowledge of Toby, or some gained knowledge of Toby. But also, this is the book where Toby really realizes that she doesn't have just one squire now. She has two. Raj looks up to her in that way. He listens to her. He trusts her. And so she has a responsibility to him. And when we get to the end, near the end, Toby says to him, war is bad. Remember that when you are king. She recognizes that there are lessons that she can impart to him that he can take and run with when he is in a position of power. And she wants to make sure that she instills that in him. And so it's really nice to see her take on that role that, yes, like he will listen to me and I have something to teach him. So that was really nice. I really loved everybody's reaction to Toby the mermaid. Everybody just kind of lost it, which makes sense because they're like freaking out. Is she freaking out? What's going on? Like, it's just so funny to watch like Danny drop her because he lost it because, you know, right? Like, it's just, I just thought that was so interesting. And then speaking of, I love Danny's, I just love Danny, first of all, but I love Danny's sense of humor as like, he's talking to rocks because he's a bridge troll, right? And he's trying to get information out of them so that he can help Toby in some way. And like, she's like, okay, hey, put some redwood branches near them, see if they recognize it, all this kind of stuff. And he's just like, are you going to make my rocks the star witness of your case? And she's just like, yeah, maybe. And like, I love that because it showcases that Danny is down for it. He likes Toby, he trusts Toby, and he loves it. But also that it shows that Toby is willing to use the resources that are available to her. He's a rich troll. He can talk to rocks. Let's see what rocks can do. Why not? Like, we need all the help we can get. And so that was really interesting to watch too. And like, I really thought it was interesting when the night haunts came because obviously they probably could have killed her. Should have killed her? I don't remember exactly. But they say, we're extending the courtesy because you saved one of our own, you know, a life that matters to us. And like, Toby is so confused, but it makes so much more sense when we realize May used to be a night haunt and she was supposed to die as Toby's fetch. Like, that's the thing about fetches. They are called and then the person dies and the fetch dies with them. Well, now technically Toby died, but Amandine broke the link between her and May, so May was able to continue living. And so they look at that and they're like, she's still alive. We owe you. And that's why they extended it out. And speaking of, it was very interesting to learn about May being a night haunt. Of course, like that comment from the night haunts that talked to Toby led her down this path of figuring it out. And I am so excited to see how it impacts the next novel. And then of course, like, we have when Mary the Roan is making all these predictions, and then she turns to Connor and she predicts his death. And it is so hard to come back to this novel and reread that section knowing that Connor is going to die because she very clearly predicted it. It was just in a language that like nobody really understood that that's what she was doing, and that's just so hard. But yeah. And of course, like, you know, when Toby is talking to Marcia and saying Jillian is gone, Rachel took Jillian, and I got to get her before Fairy breaks her. And of course Marcia's just like, she's broken. She's already broken to some extent. Like, you can't go back to things the way they do. And of course Marcia would know. Marcia is less than half Fae. I don't remember exactly the balance of her blood. I don't know if we were ever told, but she is so weak that she needs special ointment to see anything that is related to the Fae. And so Marcia understands just how broken Jillian is going to be, and it's such a hard scene to watch. But I love that Toby doesn't question Marcia. She doesn't negate what Marcia is saying. She just says, you're right. You have this experience. You're right. And then of course we found out May's backstory, but we also found out the Lushak's backstory. So the Lushak was so mean to Connor in the beginning, and like, so I don't like Connor, but so uncalled for. It feels so uncalled for. She's just so mean to him. And then, you know, like, we talked to the roan Mary, and she is just like, oh, my mom's going to be here soon. And the next big person that enters into the book, like the next character that joins, is the loose shack. And we're like, and it's there. It's like, oh yeah, no. Like, of course. And so then you know, Connor mentioning the betrayal of the roan, and then we finally get that story of the Selkies and the roan and the loose shack, and finally understanding her and why she is such a jerk to these Selkies. And it was just really nice. And I like that it's finally much more in the open, although the loose shack is obviously always still holding back. But to have that part of the story finally out in the open is just so, so nice. And that's it, you guys. Those are all my spoilery thoughts that impact just this book. If you do not want to be spoiled for the rest of this series, you should go ahead and click away now. Bye. Okay, so again, we will talk a little bit more or less in chronological order, even if it maybe doesn't feel that way. But I did think that it was incredibly interesting with Connor dying at the end that we got. I thought it was really cool that Connor was able to finally step up and be able to keep up more with Toby, much more in like a sidekick role than like an actual equal partner. But honestly, that's just so much better than where he was before, which I'd put him more in the damsel in distress kind of role. So it's really nice to finally see him starting to be able to keep up with her. But then we compare and contrast it with Tybalt, and Tybalt is much more her equal. And I thought it was really interesting that we got much more of an emphasis on that in this book, because even when Toby asks Tybalt, can you please go set some guards on Golden Green because we can't effectively, you know, guard ourselves, Tybalt goes the extra mile and thinks of something that Toby didn't and puts guards on Jillian as well. And so it's like, it's just a really nice compliment to her strengths. He has her back. He can fill in the gaps where necessary. And I really, really like that. And it was just, I feel like it was much more heavily emphasized in this book because obviously we know that eventually they do become a couple. And so it's much more like, yeah, Connor dies, but it's going to be okay because she has somebody who is going to be a much better, is going to be good for her. And then I thought it was really interesting how much emphasis was put on Toby's ability to taste magic and to pull out the scent signatures when somebody uses magic. So of course her ability is to understand, like, it's blood work, right? So she can change the balance of your blood. She's a living hope chest. And of course you have to be able to tell what the balance is before you go changing it. So when she's able to like open her mouth and breathe in and be able to tell what exactly you are, that's why. But now we're also starting to get that emphasis on her being able to figure out the scent signatures of magic as well, which I don't know if I don't think it's been said in the book so far, but which is why that it's in this section. But it's really interesting because, of course, your scent signature comes from your parents, and that's why Rachel smells like mustard flowers and burnt hot wax, is because the hot wax came from her grandfather, right? With Blind Michael, and I love this so much because it's going to become really important that she is able to track bloodlines because through their scent. And so I thought it was really interesting that we're starting to emphasize that a little bit more. And then of course, oh my gosh, when Toby went to Cliff's house and Miranda was there and Miranda was yelling at her, I was just like, whoa, she is your granddaughter and you are being a jerk. I know you don't like her because we know that she doesn't like her, but at the same time, wow. And then I thought, okay, well maybe it's partially an act, but I'm like, but I don't know. It was a trip reading that scene, knowing that Miranda is Toby's grandmother, Janet, right? It's just like, oh, so weird. And then obviously we got to Mary the Roan's predictions. And you guys know, if you've read this series, you know that Seanan McGuire does not do just throwaway stuff. And so all of Mary's predictions are going to come true. And now I want to know, what is up with it? I want to know, because what Mary said about, you know, October being a Judas and like betrayal and all these things. And I'm just like, I need to know. I need to know. And then, you know, and then we started getting hints about Quentin's background in this one. So, obviously in the beginning, Sylvester asks Toby to take Quentin on, and Toby is just like, what parent would allow their kid to be my squire? And Sylvester says, I've already talked to his parents, and his parents are really cool with it. They really want him to have a much more modern, more accepting viewpoint than previous generations, so they're really good with that. And then we find out his parents are King Solus and Queen, I don't remember her name. I am so sorry. But like, his parents are the king and queen of like North America, more or less. And so it's just like, oh wow, that's a really interesting thing that says something about them. But also we start getting clues dropped about that, where like at the end, before the big battle, they're trying to get Rachel to like stand down, and Rachel knows that she's already past the point of no return, that she is not going to get leniency from anybody. And to prove her point, obviously, she says, like, what sentence would King Solus pass down? And she points to Quentin to answer the question. And it comes off as, even a kid would know this, so I'm clearly not going to get any forgiveness. But honestly, like, she asks him because she knows who his parents are. She knows that King Solus is his dad, and he would best know how his dad would rule on that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even ever pick that up. That is so cool. And then, of course, like, when Toby tells Raj, war is bad, remember that when you're king, like, Raj says, I will remember. And then Quentin pipes up, so will I. And when you first read it, it's just like, oh, Quentin, baby doll, you are such a good person. You have so much integrity. I love you. You know, it's so good. But then you realize it actually carries a ton of weight, that he is going to be High King someday. And so him remembering that war is bad actually has an impact on so many more people. And so that was such an interesting thing to see this time around. And then lastly, we got some hints as to where one of the future books will be going with. There was such an emphasis placed on how the Queen of the Mists has gone just around the bend. She is no longer fit to really be queen. It's that madness is very heavily emphasized in this book. But then we also see the first hint that there is somebody out there who can take her place when the Lushak goes to the Redwood and says, Arden lives. And so we're starting to get those clues, and it was very, very cool to see. But that's it, you guys. That's all my non-spoilery thoughts. It was so interesting to read this. It was so cool to kind of pick up on a lot of those things that I missed the first time around. So I am very excited to read the next one. Mostly it is another missing kid story, but at least this one is not kidnapping. It's just power out of control. Mostly not kidnapping. Mostly just power out of control. In any case, that is all I have. So let me know down below if you've read this and the parts that you enjoyed, the parts that you didn't, things you picked up on that I didn't. I would love to hear it. But until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.